Hello everyone and welcome back. If you or someone you love uses a blue badge in the UK, then what I'm about to share with you today is something you really don't want to miss. Because starting from the 18th of May, there are new parking changes coming in that could quietly affect how, where, and even how long you can park your car. Now I know what you might be thinking. Oh, it's just another rule change. I'll figure it out later. But this one is different. These updates are already causing confusion in some areas, and many pensioners are only finding out when they've already received a warning or struggled to park in places they used to rely on every day. So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through everything in a simple, calm, and easy to understand way. No complicated jargon, no legal language, just real talk. We'll go through what's changing, why it matters for blue badge holders, and what you can do right now to make sure you don't run into trouble. And even if you think this doesn't apply to you, I'd still recommend staying with me until the end, because these changes might affect family members, carers, or anyone helping you get around. So let's take a breath, settle in, and go through this together, step by step. Let's start with the most important question. What is actually changing from the 18th of May? Now, across different parts of the UK, local councils have been gradually updating their parking systems and enforcement rules. For blue badge holders, this doesn't mean your badge is becoming useless or that your rights are disappearing, but it does mean that some of the flexibility people have been used to is being tightened in certain areas. One of the biggest themes in these updates is enforcement. In simple terms, councils are trying to make sure blue badges are being used correctly, and that parking spaces reserved for disabled drivers are actually available for those who genuinely need them. That sounds fair on the surface, but the way it's being implemented is where confusion often starts. In some locations, there are now stricter checks on how long a blue badge vehicle can stay parked in certain free bays. In other areas, there are new rules about digital verification or updated signage that might not look like what you are used to. And in a few places, enforcement officers are being instructed to be more active in checking misuse, even if it's unintentional. Now, if you've had a blue badge for a long time, you probably already know the basic rules. You can park closer to shops, you may be exempt from certain charges, and in many cases you can stay longer than other drivers. But what's changing here is not the core entitlement, it's the interpretation and monitoring of those entitlements. And that's where things can get tricky for pensioners, especially if you're not constantly online or keeping up with council updates. Let's talk about something very practical now, parking bays. Traditionally, blue badge holders have been able to park in designated disabled bays without time limits in many areas, unless signage says otherwise. But now, some councils are introducing timed restrictions even within these bays in busy town centers. That means you might only be allowed to stay for a certain number of hours before you need to move your vehicle. For someone doing a quick shop or a short appointment, that might not sound like a big deal. But for pensioners who may move at a slower pace or who combine several errands in one trip, it can become stressful very quickly. Imagine finally finding a good space, only to realize you're constantly watching the clock. There's also increased use of camera enforcement in some regions. Instead of a traffic warden walking around with a clipboard, cameras are now being used to log entry and exit times. That means mistakes are less likely to be forgiven because everything is automatically recorded. If your badge is not clearly visible or properly registered in a local system, you could receive a penalty notice without ever speaking to an officer. Now, I want to be very clear here. This is not about scaring you. It's about making sure you're aware, because awareness is what protects you. Another change that is starting to appear in some councils is linked to shared spaces and pedestrian zones. You may have seen these in town centers where cars are limited and walking areas are expanded. In some of these zones, blue badge access is still allowed, but the entry rules are stricter than before. You might need to register your vehicle in advance or only enter during specific hours. If you're not aware of this in advance, it can feel like you're being unfairly fined or blocked, when in reality it's just a new system you weren't informed about. This is one of the biggest issues many pensioners are facing right now. Not bad intentions, just lack of clear communication. Now let's talk about something practical you can do right away. If you hold a blue badge, it's important that you double check how your local council is handling parking rules in your area. Even within the UK, rules can vary slightly from one council to another. What is allowed in one town might be restricted in another just a few miles away. For example, in some areas you might still be able to park for free in certain car parks, while in others, you may need to display additional proof or register your badge online. And if you travel to different towns regularly, this becomes even more important. Now, I know this can feel overwhelming. Many pensioners prefer simple, consistent rules that don't change all the time. And honestly, that's completely understandable. Nobody wants to feel like they need a law degree just to go shopping or visit a friend. But the reality is that parking systems in the UK are slowly becoming more digital and more monitored. That means the responsibility is shifting slightly towards the driver to stay informed. Let's talk about another very important point: blue badge misuse checks. Authorities are becoming more careful about ensuring that badges are used by the person they were issued to. This means there may be more frequent spot checks, especially in busy areas. In most cases, this is just a quick verification, and if everything is correct, there is no issue at all. However, if a badge is being used incorrectly, even by accident, it can lead to fines or even the badge being revoked. For example, if someone else is using your badge when you are not in the vehicle, or if the badge is expired and not renewed on time. This is why it's so important to keep your badge up to date and make sure it is always clearly displayed when you are using it. Now let's slow things down for a moment because I want to talk directly to you as a viewer. If you are a pensioner watching this, I know that changes like this can feel frustrating. You might be thinking, I've parked in the same place for years, why is it suddenly different? And that feeling is completely valid. But what's happening here is not designed to make your life harder. In theory, these updates are meant to improve fairness and reduce misuse so that genuine blue badge users always have access to spaces when they need them. The challenge is that when systems change, communication doesn't always reach everyone at the right time, especially people who don't spend all day online or checking council websites. So the key message I want you to take from this is simple. Nothing about your core rights as a blue badge holder is being taken away in a sudden way, but the way those rights are managed in practice is evolving. Now, let's talk about something very practical again: how to avoid problems. One of the most useful habits you can develop is to always check signage carefully when you park. Even if you've parked there many times before, don't assume the rules are identical. Councils are updating signs, sometimes with small changes in wording that can make a big difference. For example, a sign that once said, "No time limit for blue badge holders," might now include additional conditions or reference digital registration. These small changes are easy to miss, especially if you are in a hurry or it's raining or busy around you. Another helpful step is to occasionally ask a family member or carer to help you review local updates. Even a quick 5-minute check can prevent misunderstandings later. Now, I also want to touch on something emotional here, because it matters. A lot of pensioners rely on their ability to drive and park, not just for convenience, but for independence. Being able to visit friends, go shopping, attend appointments, or simply get out of the house safely is a huge part of daily life. So when parking rules change, it doesn't just feel like a policy update. It can feel like a change in independence. And that's why videos like this are important. Because the more informed you are, the more control you keep over your daily routine. We are not just talking about parking spaces here. We are talking about confidence when you leave your home. Now, before we wrap up, I want to make something very practical crystal clear. If you take nothing else from this video, remember this: always assume that rules may have changed slightly in a new area, even if you are familiar with it. Always display your blue badge clearly, and always take a moment to read signage fully before leaving your vehicle. These 3 simple habits alone can prevent most of the common issues people are facing right now. And finally, I want to say this directly to you. If you found this helpful, or if you know someone who uses a blue badge, maybe a parent, grandparent, neighbor, or friend, please share this information with them. Because often it's not the people who are active online who need this the most, but the ones who rely on others to keep them updated. And if you want, I can also break down future UK pension updates, transport changes, or benefit news in the same simple way. Just let me know in the comments or through your next request, because staying informed shouldn't feel complicated, and you shouldn't have to struggle to understand changes that affect your everyday life. Thanks for watching, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.